But when it comes to the supernatural stuff, especially when, and this is a whole part of just acting on film, is you just have to adjust to, you're looking at a like wall of technology. You're looking
Mhm.
at giant light stands and cameras and people, and you're like doing this really intimate emotional scene. And it's just,
Right.
you just adjust to finding your focus in really, really, in situations that are very difficult to focus in.
My guest today is a graduate of Carnegie Mellon School of Drama, and she plays the lead role on the CW show Nancy Drew. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome today, Miss Kennedy McMahon. Hey, my guest is none other than Kennedy McMahon, Nancy Drew herself. Hi, Kennedy. How are you today?
Hello, I'm very good. Thank you. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you so much
Good.
for agreeing to this. I know that, you have a very, very busy schedule, but I always like to think there's a little bitty place in your heart, just a little place for me that I hope will
Oh,
forever be there.
much bigger than a little itty bitty space. I can
Good.
promise you that, and it will indeed always be there.
Thank you so much for that.
So it's
So
really is a pleasure. I'm just excited to catch up with you.
nice, me too. So Kennedy, so what my purpose is, the podcast is called Work That Out. And
Yeah.
so I think from the first time I met you, you've always had this mindset of you knew exactly where you were going. I mean, I
Mhm.
just remember as a freshman in high school, you were so completely driven. Like you almost knew that this was your predestined path and you had to do these 28 things to make it happen. How did you like develop such a growth mindset and that kind of mindset to know that this is what I want and this is how much I'm willing to work for it?
That's a great question. Because I sort of fell into my, well, I wouldn't say I fell into it. As a kid, I fell in love with acting, and knew that that was what I wanted to spend my life doing. I was in, as a young child, I had very severe obsessive compulsive disorder. And I think I found theater through a friend during that time. And so when I realized that at play rehearsal, I could take my brain out and put somebody else's brain in, and I didn't have to have my problems. It was it was addictive. It was therapy. It was an escape for me.
Mhm.
And I just fell in love with I wonder what this person's brain is like and how it works and how it's different from mine. And
Right.
I think that I just fell in love with it very quickly through that. And throughout that process of dealing with my obsessive compulsive disorder as a kid, I think that really set me up to learn to be really self-reliant very early on
Mhm.
in my life, because I found out through that process that the only person, though I had a lot of help, my parents are extremely supportive and are a big piece of that puzzle and always will be. Um, and therapy helped, and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, I knew it was up to me. I was the only one that knew what was going on in my brain and knew, had the tools to rewire it to move through, the severity of my OCD.
Right.
And so I think that when something kind of shifted in the way that I approached planning and goals, because I knew that I was in control of it. So if I set my mind to something, I learned early on in my life that I could accomplish it, even with it being very challenging. So I think that was sort of a setup, um, that then launched me into, okay, this acting thing is what I want to do. And then I also had the influence of my mom, who's an author, who I watched as a kid, go from being a real estate agent who wanted to be an author,
Huh.
work all day and come home and write all night. And then, eventually when I was in middle school was her first time she had any success at all. And then I watched her turn into an incredible best-selling author. And to be able as a kid to watch your parents,
Mhm.
achieve such an incredible dream, it instilled in me, so almost unintentionally, like, oh, if I want to be an actor, I can be an actor.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that obviously is a huge positive influence. Um, and there's just something about once I knew kind of the hard work that it took, seeing what my mom had done and my own experiences in different struggles in my life that I had gone through. Um, I think I just realized that I was like, okay, if I want this, then that I have to be an active participant in this dream. I think
Mm.
uh, a lot of kids that have, and to no detriment of theirs at all, but you like, oh, I want to grow up and be a pop star. So when I grow up, I'll be a pop star. But don't really take the steps, once they're in a place that they, even while they're still in school or whatever, to kind of transition into, okay, what steps am I taking now to get to that place eventually? Because you can start before you're a grown up,
Right.
in my case, at least, taking steps towards that. So I think a number of those things, I know that was a very rambly answer, but a number of those things I think all combined
Yeah.
put me in a space where I knew how to work
Hmm.
for what I wanted and knew that it was extremely active and required a lot of my time and a lot of my mental engagement.
Right.
So,
Cool.
does that sort of answer that
No,
question?
that totally answers it, and it also answers 3 or 4 other questions. So that's what I love about it. It's just a conversation. So, I know that I follow your dad on Instagram,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
think it's absolutely incredible. So when you contrast, uh, like my personal story for one, like I
Yeah.
didn't have the example of the parents that you have. Like
Right.
I never had anyone who made a lot of money. I never even had anyone who owned their own business who did anything that would be considered great, you know,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
highly successful. And so I think, when you grow up in that environment, then it's almost like an expectation. Were there
Hmm.
internal expectations that you felt that you had to do it?
I don't, I think my parents have always been really incredible at supporting whatever it was that I was interested in. But there was never really a moment where I doubted whether or not it was going to happen. I don't know if I left any room for that. And that comes from a place of being extremely privileged to have parents that instilled that in me.
Mhm.
But I don't think I felt pressure from them. I think that they knew I was always very independent and that
Right.
I would find my way
And
and
not from
wherever that
them.
way was.
Not from them because they said anything, just because, just the internal expectations. Oh, my mom's
Yeah.
this, and yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I did, to be perfectly honest. I just think that I just knew it was up to me.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't a like, oh God, I really hope that it works out or I'm afraid I'll be a failure. It was just sort of, well, whether that's, mentally, emotionally, physically, I have to be the one that makes it happen
Yeah.
because nobody's going to give it to you. And obviously, this comes from a lot of places of so many things lined up
Hmm.
for me. There are so many actors that have the same amount of drive and the same amount of talent or more drive and more talent that it hasn't all lined up for them.
Right.
So I come from a place of being, I totally acknowledge that I found myself in a situation where everything sort of aligned. You have
But
to prep yourself to be, not everybody's there. You have the ability to put yourself in that position, but you can't control the other factors.
right.
So obviously that's a big part of my story, but yeah, I just always knew that it sort of would come from me.
That's
And
an
so whether or not
incredible
I was a failure
perspective. Yeah.
was up to me.
Incredible because, something that, I mean, just the words that you're speaking right now, because, in 2020, but, to be honest, one of the reasons why I no longer teach is because students are different. Where,
Mhm.
they're
Yeah.
much more entitled. They don't have necessarily the work ethic. Like I remember just even in 6 years that you graduated, how
Mhm.
things have changed so much. And that you have such a work ethic is just, and you continue to have that. How do you nurture your talent and stay on top of your game right
That
now?
has been like the topic at the forefront of my mind lately, that I
Really?
because yeah, so this filming the first season of the show um has been a ridiculous test of everything that I'm made of, everything, every aspect of myself as a person, and has like the work is at the center of it, but there's so much expectation and so many other jobs that come along with that job that have nothing to do with acting.
Right.
And so it's been an incredible like kind of journey to balance, how do I continue to refine my craft and not collapse, because it's been an incredible test of endurance. And thank
Mhm.
God I have Sam, my fiance, who is so supportive of me, who literally I could not have done the season without him, because I have somebody who comes home and has done grocery shopping and has done like all the things. I literally work over 80 hours a
Absolutely.
week, and I'm gone a
Wow.
lot of weekends, so it's like I don't have the time to do that. So having his support is huge. But I, at the end of our season, before we ended up getting interrupted by the COVID-19 outbreak, um, but I was completely out of steam, completely, and I had like 3 episodes to film still, and
Wow.
I had no idea, because I was at a place where I refused to sacrifice my work. I didn't want to sacrifice the quality
Mhm.
of work I was doing as an actor. And so other things started to kind of fall to the
Mhm.
wayside, which was, I was probably a lot less pleasant to be around on set. I was exhausted and I felt really vulnerable. And so I was dealing with like, oh God, I suck. Like I'm asked to do so much vulnerable work in front of the
Mhm.
camera. And when you're like
Mhm.
exposing yourself for hours every day emotionally,
Right.
then when the camera stopped rolling, it's like, boom, like I don't have anything left. I can't, like, don't talk to me. I can't. I'm just, because you have to protect yourself.
Right.
So it's been this weird thing where I feel like I, admittedly, I think I could not do it all for that long. And I don't think anybody can
Mhm.
really, from what was being asked of me. And I was being incredibly well supported and have a lovely team, but also a
Mhm.
lot of people who worked on our show had said that they've never seen a number one work this much ever, been
Wow.
be asked to work this much. So it was sort of, I was kind of refusing to bend at all, which I think ended up being a mistake, because I was at a place where emotionally I was empty. I was physically not capable of continuing. Like when we ended up shutting down, I wasn't at work because I was like medically exhausted.
Right.
And so it's been extremely difficult to find that balance for me, because at the end of the day, I have to choose something
Mhm.
to give away. And I still don't know the answer to that yet. I'm still really, it's so funny that you asked that question, because it is by far the most prominent topic on my mind when it comes to going back to work,
Mhm.
is how do I find that balance again? How do I learn to ask for what I need? How do
Right.
I learn to rely on other people more? Because it's not in my nature.
Right.
And I think that those are the keys really. Is it's kind of strange to say, but it's being okay asking for more, being okay asking again,
Right.
and not like we were mentioned, we were talking about before we even started recording, this prospect of, we tell ourselves stories of why things aren't working or won't work
Yeah.
before we ever really attempt,
Right.
actually trying. We've written it off already.
Absolutely.
And I
Because
think I wrote a lot of narratives of people won't like me if
yeah.
I don't spend a lot of time, talking to them and whatever. when
Mhm.
honestly, like then I can't do my work if I spend all my energy socializing with people
Right.
and giving to them and whatever in these moments when I really need to be conserving that energy so I can do my job the
Mhm.
best way I can, the most efficient way I can, which serves everybody in the long
Right.
run so much more. Oh my goodness, forgive me.
That baby Otis.
Um, which serves everybody so much more when
Yeah,
I'm capable of doing my job, you know.
of course. So
So it's a balance.
what was the thing? Was there one thing like I have now become such a proponent for meditation during the day, and it's I feel like a little bit of a because I combine prayer and meditation because I think they can all
Hmm.
go together. Some people are like, oh, that's sacrilegious. I think they go together. I can
No,
talk
my
to
dad's the
just
same way.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so sometimes I pray right before I meditate, but I'm doing a challenge right now to where I'm meditating 3 times a day. I have found
Wow.
such clarity in that. Like, I mean, like I'm telling you, and that's why you kept coming up in my meditation. I was like, oh my goodness, is because I'm learning to listen to my intuition a whole
Yeah.
lot more, a lot better than I ever did. And so, is there something like one thing that you absolutely try to do your very best to put in some part of your day to make sure you work as best as you can?
Yeah. I've actually recently started meditating like the last 2 weeks, and that's a whole other journey. But I was very strict about my yoga practice
Mhm.
in the morning because I obviously work very long hours, and it's very tempting to choose 20 minutes more sleep than to get up
Yes.
and but I could always tell the difference in my work. It was a lot less grounded. It was a lot more effortful.
Mhm.
It was just a little, it was just, it just took more effort. It
Right.
just was heavier.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, that was a big thing for me mentally and physically as sort of more focusing on my acting work to serve
Mhm.
my acting work than anything
Right.
else.
Perfect. Tell me,
Yeah.
let's talk about when you first stepped on to the campus of Carnegie Mellon. And I know you have always been pretty confident. I mean, you had a lot of success before. I mean, just getting into Carnegie Mellon was like, holy shit, this is huge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But tell me where your mind was like, because sometimes it's like, oh, you were a big fish in high school. Now you're a
Right.
big fish being thrown into this lake with other big fish.
Right.
What was your mindset and how did you develop through that whole process of being at Carnegie Mellon for 4 years? Like, did you have doubt in the beginning or were you confident? Tell me about that mental process.
Yeah, there's a lot of things come to mind. First of all, I was confronted with um, a lot of people who were very different from me, who I had never uh, really encountered before. People from very different backgrounds. That was a huge learning process in itself, which was an enormous gift because where I grew up and you know, where we knew each other is a very small conservative place and
Right.
is a doesn't have a lot of variety. And so that was a big awakening for me. But then when it came to, I think the first half of my journey there was a lot about doing things for other people.
Mhm.
Was how do I do this project to impress this teacher the most? Or how am I supposed to do it? It was a lot of like evaluating what my professor or my classmates might
Mhm.
think or what they believed it should look like or should feel like. And I found that was really limiting me a lot. It was keeping a lot of my work at a very surface place, at a really
Mhm.
controlled place. And that was something I know you as my acting teacher for so long. And it's still to this day probably my biggest issue is being afraid of letting go of
Yes.
control. It still is.
Really?
I swear to you, all 4 years there, that's all I heard was like, we just need you to get messier.
Just let
And that's
go.
what that's always what you told me too. Um, that's just in my nature. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think I found, I would say my biggest arc at Carnegie Mellon was learning to do something from my own instincts, from myself, for the product that I believed in, instead of for what I assumed people would want for me or how to please somebody.
Right.
Because I was very addicted to pleasing people. I still have to rewire that in my brain. Like I'm feeling like maybe just recently, this experience shooting the season and kind of now coming down from it afterwards. My goodness gracious. And coming down from it afterwards has been a lot of finding out who I am and what it is that I want. I've been really, throughout that journey, really figuring out how to, my work got so much better once I stopped doing it because I thought it was what they wanted it to look like, and started, really creating from who I am.
Right.
And that also, I think that in how I improved as a leader at work, was when I stopped trying to be what I thought it should look like.
Right.
And just started acting from what I know to be true and who I know myself to be. So I would say that was probably the biggest takeaway from my time there. Nice. Yeah.
Tell me about, I just remember like when you told us like, oh my God, like we were doing the whole Tony nomination thing and you were in the process of doing all the whole screening. Tell the audience a little bit about, what that journey was like. Like, how did you get the role? Just because that's got to be the most exciting thing. You're just graduating and here you are.
Yeah.
What was that like?
So I went into that pilot season, being, for anybody who doesn't know, it's January through March where everybody's casting new projects, new shows. And that's where a lot of, actors that don't have any name recognition can kind of get a foot in the door. And your chance at getting bigger roles than just, guest stars and things.
Right.
So I was going into my first pilot season with, my goal was to get a call back for something. And that would be like, because I had done a lot of auditions that, I had gotten to do Law and Order SVU was my big job.
I still have that recorded.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's so cool. I was so nervous. Oh my God. I was an absolute wreck when I filmed that. But so I had that under my belt, which was helpful, but I had done so many auditions that were just like crickets, which is very normal. It would have been really normal for that to continue going on for a lot longer than it did. But so I went to pilot season and I got, I had done an audition or two that had gone really well. And then I did the Nancy audition. And when I got that, when my agent even texted me that role existed, that pilot was being made, that was a dream come true for me. She was always, that character was always so highly valued to me. And when I read the script, I was like, oh my God, this girl is me. Like, this is how I speak. This is how my brain works. This is how, we're different obviously in certain ways, but our humor is very similar. Like, I was like reading my own brain. And I was like, oh my God, I have to do this. I have to do this. And so I had auditioned and I thought it went very well in New York, but they cast primarily out of Los Angeles. And I just kind of crossed my fingers and hoped that my tape would make it to LA. And that week, I ended up getting 3 test offers in my first week of pilot season, which is...
Yeah, explain what a test offer is. Okay.
So that's when essentially they fly you out to Los Angeles, and it's when you're testing against like 2 or 3 other people for the part. So it's like you're down to, and you're testing in front of the executives for the network and the studio. So it's like all of a sudden these people who are really influential know who you are.
Right.
And that happened. I flew out to LA for 3 of those, which at the same time, which was really, I don't know what happened. I don't know what was in the water, but it just was like, boom. And it happens in order of when you get the offers. So I had gotten an offer for a part So it was in first position. And then I got the call for Nancy. So that would have to be in second position. So if I got the first part, I would have to take it. Even though I would have preferred Nancy. And then I had a third test offer that was in third position.
Okay.
But because the first two shows were on the same studio, they let me switch them, which was very generous of them. They let me pick kind of so that, you know, because one was it was a great part, but it was not, you know, I would have gotten swallowed by a cast of very well-known, talented actors, and I would have been in this very side part of it, which would have been fantastic. That would have been amazing. But it was, you know, also it was my dream character to play Nancy. So I went in for that. There are 3 other girls there, and you're all in the same room, so everybody's there together, and you're like, hey, we all look the same. Whoa. It's like super weird, and like everybody wants so bad, and like it's just like so nutso. And I found out later that they had auditioned 4,000 girls for this part, and I was like, you're joking. I didn't know that until after I got the part, which probably helped, because if I knew that, I would be like, oh my God. But yeah, so I went in for the studio, and then we just did scenes with the casting director, and they taped it. And that night I ended up going in with the casting director for a work session, and with producers as well. And we like totally rejigged it. We did it entirely different way. Because I wasn't coming across as youthful as they wanted me to, which has always sort of been my nature.
You've always been so super mature.
To my detriment in this case. But we kind of played with some things, and then I went the next day to the network, so to the CW executives. So we're a production that is produced by CBS Studios, but through the CW network. And then, I found out later that day that I got the part. And it was like, I remember having a silent phone call with Sam, my fiance. And we were just like, I was like, so I got it. And it was just like, everything had changed.
Yeah.
Everything had changed. So yeah, it was so wild. It was so wild. And it was one of the things too, that I have in writing a text to one of my very good friends, Myhala. I texted her and I said, before I auditioned for the part at all, I was like, I don't know. I was like, Myhala, I'm gonna do this. Like, it's gonna work out.
You just felt it.
Yeah. Yeah,
wow.
It was pretty magical.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. It's absolutely incredible. So let's talk about this. Congratulations on the season being picked up for, like, the show being picked up for season 2.
Thank you.
Okay. So if I'm honest here, I've never been a Nancy Drew fan, because I'm so scary. And let me tell you, the first time Dead Lucy was on the ceiling, I just wanted to turn the TV off and see Shelley likes that stuff, because she likes to laugh when people get scared. And so it took me a while to deal with Dead Lucy. And so what I realized, so we got behind, we watched, I think the first 5 episodes, either the night or the next night. And then life happened, and then we got behind. Oh yeah. But let me tell you, the best thing was we caught up and just binged. That's what you need to do. You got to binge. Yeah. And then I was like, because it's a long season. And with so much time in between, it's like, oh my God, well, what happened with this? I was so impressed with the writing. I mean, just the stuff that they were introducing in the very beginning, and then that whole, and girl, I'm sure everybody knows now, the last episode that Dead Lucy, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say it, but surely I
mean, it's out there.
That Dead Lucy is your mother, and you're a Hudson. And so our minds were just blown. And so that cemented, we're going to watch every show because you're in it. Oh. But now, after having seen the season and the writing and how they introduce these nuggets and sew it all up, we're going to watch the show because we think it's a good show.
That's so nice. I'm
Yeah,
so glad to hear that. Because I mean, I have no desire to put any pressure on anybody in my life
of
at all to
course.
watch it.
Yeah,
But it's really, really cool to hear that.
yeah.
Because I think it's really, we just have so much fun making it.
Mhm.
And it's, yeah, everything, how it's interwoven is really, really impressive. I think the writers have
Right.
done an excellent job setting, and it's all been planned from the
Yeah.
beginning. I
Okay.
mean, very little of it is, you
Wow.
know,
Now you don't look like you're having a lick of fun in that character. I'm like, why won't they let Nancy have some fun? I mean,
oh
it
God,
might
tell
be
me about
for
it.
8 seconds, and then you're again. It's like holy
Yeah.
shit, and you're in like almost every scene. So I
Hmm.
get why you feel. So let's talk about. I've always been a director who believes in the level of believability. What are you gonna do to get into character? Now you're
Yeah.
dealing with all these supernatural elements.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure is Lucy actually on the ceiling? I mean,
No.
right?
It's
How
really
how do you
hard.
make that believable?
That is, in my opinion, by far the hardest part of my job.
Hmm.
And as from the beginning, I was like, because I've always been really, I've always connected to, I've just always been very good at convincing myself that the false scenarios are really happening to me.
Hmm.
I've never been somebody to be like, oh, I'm gonna think about that time that I was really sad. It was like not about. It's not bad. It's just like
Yeah.
I can, I just have. I think it's quite muscular of training yourself to just really buy in
Hmm.
to your given circumstances. But when it comes to the supernatural stuff, especially when, and this is a whole part of just acting on film, is you just have to adjust to, you're looking at a like wall of technology. You're looking
Hmm.
at giant light stands and cameras and people, and you're like doing this really intimate emotional scene. And it's just,
Right.
you just adjust to finding your focus in really, really, in situations that are very difficult to focus in,
Hmm.
or very difficult to, when you're on stage. I mean, it's you and your partner.
Absolutely.
But on a film set, it's a lot of
It's the
distractions, a
cameraman
lot
with
of
the
people
boom, and
who, yeah, the boom, and they're going like all around your face,
you're
and
like, no, no,
you're like
just
thinking
focus on the
about the
guy.
angle of like the camera, and you're like just working. I mean, it's a dance with the camera, it's a dance
Hmm.
with the lights. You're finding lights at different moments, and you're like, it's all, there's so much going on. So I think that just by learning how to do that, it helped with the
Hmm.
supernatural stuff, but that stuff is still so hard because there's no grounding in reality. I have never seen a ghost personally, in real life,
Right.
but it's, yeah, and it's a lot of pretending you're acting to like a tape X, or, the classic
Right.
tennis ball on a stick or something.
Okay.
And you just kind of get, you just kind of, there's something about it that's very, that stuff is more outside in rather than
Hmm.
inside out,
Yeah.
as far as an acting technique. um
Right. So,
if that
but
makes sense.
where do you go mentally when, I mean, because you have to pull a lot of tears in Nancy Drew throughout the season, and you always like, like when we're talking about, you find out that, that you're not a Drew, and you
Hmm.
had this bond with your mother who had
Hmm.
cancer, and you weren't able to say goodbye, all these things.
Hmm.
Where do you go? What do you pull that from?
Yeah, I think I've developed quite a, uh as time has gone on, and like as you get to know the space that you're working in and the sets you're working in and
Hmm.
places to hide and like things that work, and it's taken some time for me to sort of refine that process, especially with different directors. Sometimes you have directors that come in that really throw me off, like really, I really don't click with.
Hmm.
And that makes things very difficult, makes you much less likely to be available, to be vulnerable, because
Hmm.
you don't trust someone
Right.
in the room who's really, really watching you. um, so for me, a lot of it is because I spend so much time with this character. When I was filming the season, I was spending more hours as Nancy than I was as myself. So that it became very real and very easy in a way to access the emotional life. But I always, I mean, I use music. There are sets that I escape to. I always go, if we're filming in the studio, I'll go to Nancy's bedroom set and just live
Mhm.
in that space, just be there. And, thankfully we have an incredible department that has filled that room with actual stuff that if I open the closet, there's clothes in there. Like,
Right.
there, and that's an enormous gift as an actor to have somebody realize, all the stuff that a lot of the times you're
Right.
just kind of filling out in your brain.
Hmm.
But um yeah, there is a sort of, when I know that one of those scenes is coming, it's sort of, how do I bring myself to be available
Hmm.
to this reality as soon as possible in the day
Right.
so that it can sit. And this was the same for auditions too, when I was going in and doing auditions, like for Law and Order SVU. I mean, you go in there and you're in a scene and I was sexually abused and I saw my fiance murdered and like blah, and you're right there and you have no time and it's just like boom.
Boom. Do
And
it.
it's the same. I mean, things move so fast on a TV set as well. So it's really about kind of allowing that to build as early on in the day as possible and letting it sit just right under the surface
Hmm.
so that when the time comes, it's right there. And I
Right.
really think that sort of emotional athleticism is also very muscular and was something that I think I learned a lot and worked on a lot in school,
Right.
that I really credit my training to, because it's exhausting and it feels like you have nothing. And sometimes it's just about, how do I like reset and just think, I don't know what's going to come out. It's not about, for me, it's never about like, oh, I want to cry in this scene.
Hmm.
It's never about the product,
Right.
but reeling back and taking everything away and going, okay, I just need to unzip myself and see what's really there.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's nothing. And that can be incredibly powerful, because sometimes it's really nothing. And it's just, I remember there was a scene that I did, and it was right at the end of our filming the season, and I was so exhausted, and Nancy was so exhausted. Like,
Hmm.
it was insane. The stuff that they have put her through as a
Yeah.
character is
Oh my God.
crazy. And I was talking, thankfully, I had just our most incredible director. His name is Larry Tang, he was our co-EP and producing director for a while. And he was directing that episode, and he was, he had sort of seen the scene in a different way that was extremely viable. But I was like, Larry, honestly, like, I am so tired. I am so exhausted. I just want this to be over. Not the whole,
Oh, right. Right.
not the show,
The
whatever,
show.
not
Yeah.
that at all. But I was
Yeah.
like, speaking sort of from a combination of where Nancy was and where I
Hmm.
was, which was just like, I just think she's exhausted and she
Yeah.
just doesn't know what to do with this. So she doesn't know how to handle it. She doesn't know
Hmm.
how to approach. It was a scene between Nancy and Ryan, and it was like, she doesn't know how to approach this. She just wants it to be over. And like, she just needs to just say it and it needs to be done. Because that's also
Yeah.
how I was feeling. I was like, I don't have anything left. I
Mm.
just want this to
Mm.
be over. And
Right.
he was like, that's
That's
the
it.
whole scene right there. And that was the scene.
Right.
And we figured it out because that's what it had to be.
That's
And
perfect.
yeah, just learning to really listen to
Right.
yourself
Yeah.
and use what you have when you have it. Because a
Hmm.
lot of times that's going to serve you way better than trying to make something
Right. And
out of
speaking
nothing.
up for what you need, because people don't know what you need until you tell them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So, oh my goodness, that's incredible. And so I can even think about the exact moments when you're like, this is it, I'm done. You're in that
Yeah.
car with Ryan Hudson. You guys are at the railing. He leaves you there and it's like, what do you mean? You're supposed to bring a blood relative here. Why is Ryan Hudson here? Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
Totally with you with all of that. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
And that was like the exact arc that I was talking about.
Yes, perfect. What is the biggest acting insight that you have gotten whenever on set at Carnegie Mellon in your whole career? Like, had you known that, earlier, things might have been a little different.
That's a great question. I would say if I hadn't, this is entirely props to you. If I had not gone in to my time at Carnegie Mellon without having a really strong understanding of the incredible value of objective, that is everything. That's it. That's everything. If you know what you want,
Right.
then you've you've cracked it. I mean, there's a lot more complicated than that.
Of course, of
but
course.
But that's the foundation of everything that I do still.
Wow, that's incredible.
Is what do I want?
Yeah.
and fighting for it. And that's it. That's the whole thing. And then there's something that I learned. Yeah, exactly. And the obstacles fill themselves in, you know, as you go along, if you're really that committed. And if you're lucky enough to have a partner that's also equally committed to fighting for what they want. And thankfully, you know, I have a great cast who's really fun to play with in that regard. But then also something that I always kind of retreat back to is God, whose book was this? I don't know why it's fallen out of my head. But where is the love is a huge thing too, because if you're entering a situation, even if conflict, there's no point in you being there or fighting for anything if there's not some element of love in whatever your character is fighting for or who they're fighting with. And never letting that fall away, because then it becomes nothing. I mean, then it becomes pointless. This is a pointless fight that's just a fight for fighting's sake. And I remember that was something I was very inclined to do, I think, a lot when I was in high school, was whenever there was a chance to fight, it was about anger. And it was just like, boom. It was just
fought well.
Fighting. I did, but that's not like, it lost so much depth. And I mean, I remember two very specific circumstances in high school, in August Osage County.
I knew,
and in Kentucky Cycle, where at least for the Kentucky Cycle specifically, there was the scene, the pots and pans scene. There's a scene where I had to rally everybody who hated me, essentially, to be on my side. And all I ever could figure out with that was, you know, it was just like, just yelling at them. There's so much anger and so much like, why can't you see what I'm seeing?
Right.
And so I had lost the love. I had lost the love that she felt and why she was doing what she was doing. And the same with August Osage County, and the same in a million things I did in college and still, you know, fail to do sometimes, you know, to this day. But when you reconnect with like, how can you get to this person's heart by using your own, no matter the circumstance of the scene.
Right.
I think that will always keep the audience interested, because they have to feel you caring. You have to really care. It has to have the stakes for you. So if your heart's not in it, it's just a fight for no reason.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to root for. It's just like,
right. Very true.
People being angry, you know?
Right. No, I totally get that. Yeah. Because I remember for a long time, like, I didn't like I remember when, you know, when I cast you as Marianne Rowan, like, that is, oh my God, I just love that show. And I remember, you know, it took you a while to find who she was and what she was all about. But when you found her, I just was like, because I think I kicked a chair that day in a good way. Yeah. And it was like, oh my God, she delivered this monologue. It was just so, I mean, I
remember that day, like the back of I actually told the story of that to Sam the other day because of a different reason. I don't know if you remember the other circumstances involved with the other people in the room at that time.
So excited.
But no, it was amazing. But no, I remember you told me, I think 3 days before we opened, that you didn't like my character at all. You're like,
you're
doing some good stuff, but I just don't like her.
I don't like her. I don't care if she wins. Yeah.
And you have to care. You have to care.
And that made
and that's been a really tricky thing with Nancy too, because she can be very brash, and she has a lot of flaws, a lot. And I'm sure there are people that don't like her and don't root for her, but I think she has a lot of heart, because all of it comes from deep love and deep care.
Yeah. So just want to switch gears for a little bit. You know, I think it's so important that you surround yourself with people of a certain caliber. Now, I don't mean like, you know, wealth or anything like that, but you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. How selective are you in the people that you do spend your time with, like your circle of friends, and what is it that you look for in them?
Yeah. I think quite selective. Um, and I think it took going through my experience at college was, 25 of us together all the time,
Mm-hmm.
or we had to be committed to each other because we were it for each other for those 4 years. And there was something so exciting about narrowing that down after we all graduated, because some of my very best friends in the world were in those 25 people, and some of the people that I truly detest more than anybody else in the world are in that group of people. And so it was very exciting, I think, when we graduated, and it was like, okay, who is it for me? And that's
Right.
continually been refined, especially when this big change in my life happened, when I got Nancy and I went to film the season. um, who I stayed in contact with, and who I continued to revisit.
Mm-hmm.
That's narrowed down to probably about like 4 or 5 people, um, not including Sam and my,
Of
my
course.
parents and
Yeah.
stuff. And it's really become something where it's like, I just do not have, and a lot of this has come from kind of trying to slough off that desire to always be pleasing people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think so much of it is I just don't have the time for people that are not, are not some sorts of joy to me, that don't reconnect me with who I know I really am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I think informed me a lot, again, in this major life shift where I'm around a lot of people who only know me through the context of my job,
Right.
including my castmates and people on the crew. And some of those people are in my kind of very close
Mm-hmm.
circle. But what I kind of found is I'm just want to be reconnected with the people who I know who I am from at a very deep intrinsic level,
Right.
because they and that don't have aren't viewing me through the lens of this job that I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
but know me because of what we've been through together.
Because who you
And
are.
yeah, it's been pretty massive, because I've had to learn through this whole process that I'm going to disappoint people, that I lost plenty of friends when this happened, because it's also a matter of me and a group of friends who are all looking to accomplish the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the timing in which it happened for me. And that doesn't align with the timing in which it happened for other people necessarily.
Right.
And so that, yeah, has just caused a lot of shifting in those relationships, and kind of figuring out who really supports me very genuinely as a
Right.
person.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And even as, someone who's much older, that is such a vital role. Like in the last couple of years, I've
Yeah.
sort of been doing a little bit of housekeeping
Yeah.
because, I noticed, again, like I said earlier in the conversation, that I didn't have these influences in my life, but I also realized that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, but I was a different person with every different group of people. Like sometimes I was the joking chameleon. Sometimes I was the vulnerable one. Sometimes I'm just, this overly dramatic storyteller. But I was never this consistent person, and I had such a hard time with it. And the older you get, the more you just don't put up, you don't feel like you have to wear that facade as much, And so
Yeah.
I've just gotten to such a different place in my life, to where so many things are so much more important now. And
Yeah.
I only want to surround myself with people who are for me.
Yeah.
And not people who I feel like, and I don't mean against me because they don't like me, but people who are going to nurture. I mean, this is, I had my friends are like, oh my God, you're going to do what? You're going to quit your job? Are you crazy? What do you mean? I wouldn't quit it now. I mean, just all these things. No, I want people to go, quit your job yesterday.
Yeah.
And so, because I believe so much in what you can do, and so that's just so vitally important. So how do you, I know that it's important for you to separate your personal life and your private life, well, your private life and your work life, but
Mm-hmm.
how do you stay on how do you stay out of choosing a side on controversial issues?
Oh, that's very relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm doing a lot of learning about what my place is and what I want to represent
Mm-hmm.
as a public figure,
Right.
which I'm not to a lot of people, but I am to some people. And I've kind of learned to acknowledge that. And it's definitely changing, because I'm by nature a very open book.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I have leaned on the side of indulging in that because it's, because I don't know, anybody that's supporting me on these, on social media, for example, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'll share everything I think with you.
Uh-huh.
And that is not sitting right with me anymore, for a number of different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like, especially at work, I'm so exposed. I have nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
Literally everybody knows where I am all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and sees me in a lot of very vulnerable scenarios.
Right.
And it's starting to become, people really are very quick to expect everything from you. Very, very judgmental if you stop.
Right.
Because then it means that you must be doing something bad, like you had, like, or what, I don't know. People are so quick to assume the worst because, and I think, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily call it a mistake that I am naturally very open on that platform, but I do see that changing because I want people, especially because I have a younger audience.
Mm-hmm.
My goal has always been to be truthful to myself, but also try to enforce as much positivity, try to be
Right.
a place where people can come and feel comforted, not make it about, I just had started, like, I heard from a couple people of like, I just really love coming to your Instagram page because it just makes me really happy. And I'm like, that is so enough for me.
Yeah.
And it's really tricky because you kind of have to choose. People expect also somehow, like, because I'm an actor, that it's my responsibility to have a very loud voice when it comes to social issues or political issues. And there's absolutely room and space for that. And I am totally supportive of other people using that. And I spend a lot, I have a real kind of, for whatever reason, it doesn't feel right to me to be like, look at me and look at the things that look at what I care about and blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm an actor, and I love talking to people who love watching my show, but I want them to have a safe space to come, because the world is absolutely bombarded with all of those. There's no shortage of people sharing their opinions.
Right.
None. On lots of different sides.
It's very true.
And I think that that's great, and it's incredibly important. And I work very hard to construct situations in my work to and in my personal life and in the charities that I support and in the work that I do behind the scenes, to support all of the things that a lot of those people are, posting about on social media. To me, that can feel a little shallow. Not that those people, that's not saying that all the people that post those sorts of things are about that. But I just don't know if that's right now my place where I can feel like I feel like I have a lot more room to actually do things that I believe in and support things that I believe in using my time and my money and action. And I think that there's a little bit of pressure to I'll just repost this thing. Here's this picture.
And this is what I stand for.
Right. Without actually ever backing it up.
Right.
And there's absolutely incredible use to bringing light to situations and just general people talking and educating other people. That's a fantastic thing. And it's critically important. But like I said, I feel like that market is flooded. And I think that there is use for a place where people can go and just not be bombarded with that.
Yeah.
And be like, this is the girl who I follow because she's Nancy Drew. And I don't like, that's kind of why I came here, and just be okay with that.
Right.
Because I feel so pulled in so many directions, and it just feels like nothing will ever be enough.
Hmm.
So I just have to kind of make a choice of what do I want to present to the world? What function do I want to serve?
Right.
And being okay with that and understanding the value of serving, of different people serving different functions. And not everybody can do it all, literally
Right.
can't. And that there's value in, all sorts of things. So
Right.
I was really long-winded, but that's just very much on the top of my
Yeah.
mind right now.
No, I
Um,
totally get it.
yeah,
So thank you for sharing that. And
yeah,
I feel like you've always been an open book. You've always been, but yeah, there comes a time where you have to protect yourself. You have to set those
yeah.
boundaries, for your mental well-being, for, so
Hmm.
that you can be Kennedy. Sam
Yeah,
wants Kennedy. Sam doesn't want Nancy Drew, those
yeah,
types of things.
exactly.
So, congratulations on your engagement. I don't know if, I think
Ah,
I've texted that
thanks.
to you, because I think, my top two values are love and connection. And I believe we were put on
Hmm.
this earth so that we could connect authentically with other people, and I don't,
You and my dad are so alike.
I need to spend more time with that man, but
You
they
really
moved.
should.
But they moved.
I know.
And then he turned your bedroom into a book closet or a library, a library. I just have two more questions for you. So, who is the actor that you hold in the highest esteem that, oh my goodness, if I could just work with so and so, that's the icing on the cake?
I would say I'm not like super quick to become like mega fans of anybody,
Hmm.
but Florence Pugh is probably that person for me right now. Are you
Okay.
familiar with her?
No.
So she most recently and like most significantly was in the newest adaptation of Little Women. But I think she's very young. She's just a little bit older than me, and that she's just incredible. She's very grounded in a way that the kind of a big acting focus for me in more recently um, has been just trying to remove affectations that protect me, that
Okay.
are like self-defense mechanisms
Right.
from being like truly open.
Hmm.
And that whether that's a vocal affectation or a physical a gesture or something. She's very, very good at just being, which is so difficult. So difficult. But it would probably be her.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that.
Uh-huh.
So let's say you're going to live to be 110.
Oh
Before,
wow.
yeah, that's a long life, And some people I'll ask and they go, I don't live to be that long. And I'm like, I do. 110, baby, here I come. What is
You can do it.
I can do it. What is an impossible dream that you would like? Like, it doesn't even have to do with acting, but what's an impossible thing that today you can't even make that happen? But with some time, you would love to be able to have done what with your life?
Ooh. I feel entirely disconnected from like any sort of creation with my hands. Like I don't feel capable of like making anything like physically. So I think in some like beautiful retired life, I would just love to be very. I've also lived a lot in cities. I would love to be very disconnected and maybe have some sort of nice
Pottery farm.
cheese farm. That's actually it's very appealing just to feel self-reliant in terms of I'm just so adjusted to everything's very instant,
Hmm.
everything's very readily available,
Yeah.
and I feel so disconnected from the creation of it all.
Hmm.
And I think I would love to reconnect with what it actually is to curate something.
Yeah. Oh, that's powerful. I love that because, it's like, would you say that you've achieved your definition of success so far?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot more places I want to go.
Of
I got
course.
a lot of bigger dreams on the table, but I always said, as far as an acting dream, was I wanted to be on a television show that meant something to people.
Hmm.
There's other acting dreams that I have too, but I think it kind of came down to that. And I just wanted to have a lot of fun. I wanted to enjoy it because there's so
Yeah.
much, a lot of so much like torture, like
Right.
emotionally
Yeah.
and a lot of work. And I love that too. Don't get me wrong, but I wanted to at least have fun.
Right.
And I have most definitely achieved those things. Um,
Nice.
and as you know, I completely am in alignment with you regarding what's really important, what
Hmm.
really matters, which is developing relationships that are really meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And the relationship that I have with Sam is the best part of my life,
Oh, that's
and
incredible.
still is still what I consider my greatest
Yeah.
success and accomplishment, and is the most satisfying thing to continue to work on.
Hmm.
So
Nice. Thank you for sharing that, because I mean, again, love, it just, it's not oversaid that it makes the world go around.
yeah.
So I just want to close with whenever I talk to my friends Val and Kevin, your
Oh,
name will come up. And I think that is because you've always been such a genuine person. Like you're saying, I need to learn how to say no, but you've always been so giving of your time. You've always, you genuinely were sincere in every interaction, and you give so much of yourself, to where I know that that's hard to, as you get older, more things will be demanded of you. But that's one part of Kennedy that I hope forever stays within you and your soul, and that you just keep that part so precious right here. You know,
I appreciate that so much. Thank
absolutely.
you.
So
Thank you. And thank you
thank
for
you.
saying that.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for doing this, Kennedy.
Oh
It
my
means the
gosh.
world to me. So thank you.
Really is a pleasure. This was so much fun. And thanks for listening to me, Babylon. I clearly had a lot to say.
And we often do, but these are the kind of conversations that I love to have with everybody. And
Hmm.
that was one reason why I said, oh, I gotta start choosing different friends, because sometimes I would want to have these kinds of conversations. They'd be like, why are you asking me that stupid question? Don't be so nosy. And I was like, I'm just trying to get to know you on a deeper level. What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
It's a stupid question. And so I was like,
And it
oh,
just
okay.
like, it allows you to grow. I mean, even just in these, as I've kind of answered these questions, it's
Mhm.
like just helping me navigate it mentally too, because I feel like I'm right now in a period of like such extraordinary growth, and
Mhm.
I am not quite sure where I stand on a lot of things, and I'm really in the middle of a lot of processes, I feel.
Right.
And so to be given the chance to talk it through is such a gift, because it's really helps me kind of make connections and
Mhm.
tie things back to one another, and kind of find out where it is, where I'm really at, without
Right.
external influence. So yeah, it is extremely helpful to me.
Yeah. And so the very final thing that I would ask, it seems a little
Yeah.
silly to ask with you, is like, where can people connect with you? Well, we all know where to connect with you, but is there any other place? I know, because I follow you on Instagram. I mean, like, do you have
Hmm.
a website? Where else could people connect with you?
Instagram's definitely the best place. I'm kind of on and off Twitter, so that's not really very reliable. Um, but yeah, mostly Instagram. That's pretty
Okay.
much it. And then you can watch Nancy Drew on
Yeah.
HBO Max. You can stream it on HBO
Oh.
Max out
Huh.
now, or on
Okay.
CWTV.com.
Yeah. Who knew I would be a Nancy Drew fan?
Who knew?
Who knew? I didn't know. Yeah, I can't wait for season 2. But I do know that what I'm gonna do next season is I'm gonna watch the first half, then I'm gonna wait and then watch the second, because I need
Smart.
to binge them. So I like
Oh
that.
yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you so much, Kennedy. I appreciate
My
it.
absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Hi to Sam, and look at that baby. Look at that
I know.
baby.
Wiped out.
Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. Have a good night.
Thank you.
So
You
good to
too.
connect with you
Give my
again.
love to Shelly.
I will.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Okay.
like what you're hearing, and perhaps you're interested in having a complimentary conversation with me, click the link at the bottom of the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. If you even want to know more about what I'm up to, head over to traviastewart.com. And if you like seeing the videos of the podcast, every episode is on my YouTube channel. Take care, guys.